Street.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We came back yesterday to a new year and to the Prime Minister's statement where he asserted that he was looking for a step change in the New Zealand economy. And what did we get in that statement that would lead us to believe that those words are at all realisable? We got nothing. We got no plan. We got the usual National Party mantra, which has been their same mantra for the last 20 years, of lower taxes. Lower taxes for the rich and an increase in GST to be paid for largely by the poor. And so the dropping of the tax rates for the wealthy are meant to try to give us a step change in the economy. Where will we get a step change in this economy if there is no investment being put into tertiary education? And I want to make that one of my particular themes today, because in the absence of a plan, we are left with threats and veiled threats over tertiary education that do not augur well for the future of this country. I want to pick up, first of all, a comment from Bernard Hickey yesterday, and the National Party has been trying to dismiss Bernard Hickey's commentary. Usually they like to hug him to death. Bernard Hickey is no particular friend of mine or of the Labour Party, but he has just said in his comment that John Key has just sent Generation X and Y a clear message: leave the country now. He's saying all those too poor to own a home now will never be able to own their own home. He is accepting the poverty and the hopelessness that is often attached to the working poor in rental accommodation. He is saying, tough, my backers own property, we won, you lost, eat that. The same thing could be extrapolated from Mr. Key's comments about tertiary education, because where this government appears to be taking tertiary education is nowhere that is going to lead to the kind of economic improvement and the productivity that is required if everybody's aspirations, including the Prime Minister's, are to be met. John Key will never get us anywhere near Australia if he doesn't invest in tertiary education or in young people in the way that Australia has. Another long-time commentator has said to John Key to prove the Reserve Bank governor is wrong. He has challenged him to say that Alan Bollard is wrong in his assessment of our ability to catch up with Australia. The future the Prime Minister mapped out yesterday in his statement will in fact prove Alan Bollard right. But this isn't about personalities. This isn't about Key versus Bollard. This is about ideas, and this is about plans, and this is about the imagination and the courage to invest in young people in order that they might acquire the skills they need to achieve the high income earning jobs they aspire to, and so continue to contribute to New Zealand's productivity. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Key said that the government was intending to, quote, take a careful look at the policy settings around student support. Now, what on earth does this mean? Well, we're left to fill the gap ourselves, because clearly the Prime Minister either didn't know what to say or wasn't prepared to say it. Will students only be able to access student allowances, for example, if they pass everything? if they pass all their subjects? What if they actually need more support to pass and not doors being closed on them? Who will decide if a student has made a genuine effort and not simply chosen the wrong course initially and has changed their mind as a result of that about their course of study? It seems to me that when Mr. Key was talking about those people, and I quote, who refuse to take their tertiary studies seriously, unquote, was probably only talking about rich kids, because it seems to me that only rich kids can afford not to take their studies seriously. Because the reality is that most students you look at, whether they're enrolled in a polytech or a university, are working hard and they are juggling challenging study with part-time work, usually on low rates of pay, to support themselves and supplement their allowances. Now, these young people are about to be clobbered with an increase in GST. They are not the ones who are going to benefit from tax cuts for the rich. They will only get the other part, the increase to GST. They're not superannuitants. They won't get any imagined compensation from the government. They are not beneficiaries. They will not be getting any imagined compensation from the government for increased GST. They are simply students. They are the ones on whom our future depends, and they are going to be clobbered with an increase in GST, no tax cut for them, and I anticipate, Mr. Speaker, greater difficulty in accessing loans and allowances, so that the government is clearly, whether by intention or ignorance I've not yet discerned, setting up tertiary education once more to become the domain of the well-off few, not the less well-off many. In fact, the step change that needs to occur in the economy in this country is absolutely dependent upon raising the skills of everybody. And so when we talk about trades training in schools and we look at what the government is proposing, they have outlined a plan for 5 trades academies around the country. 5 trades academies. If one needs to look for another policy where it talks about the few rather than the many, it's going to be hard to find one, because our policy in government was Schools Plus, which extended trades training and flexible high school programs to every school in the country, not simply to 5 selected trades academies. The investment that needs to be made in education beyond the school gate is going to be the thing that makes the difference. That is going to be the thing that causes New Zealand to prosper. For mature students with families or redundant workers trying to upskill for another job, this double whammy of a higher GST and harder to get loans and allowances will be especially difficult. And in addition to this, another gap in the Prime Minister's speech, which we are left to fill, is the veiled threat of the raising of the fee maxima cap at tertiary institutions. So if fees are raised, increased GST is added to all necessary consumer goods and services, and access to loans and allowances is made harder, what is to become of our world standard education system? The government clearly wishes to create an increasingly elitist tertiary education system for their rich friends. We know what has happened to their view of the underclass in New Zealand. They don't like listening to stories about the underclass anymore, because it is entirely apparent from the statement that the Prime Minister made yesterday that any investment in a step change in the economy is going to result in a wider gap between